Hello and welcome to Homemade Conversations, a podcast about the residents. I'm Oprah and welcome to my book club.
And I'm Mole, and I cannot guarantee that the events of this book did not happen.
And I'm Mew, and my favorite part of the Brick Eaters is where the Brick Eaters, the Brick Eaters, they eat bricks.
You didn't read the book, did you?
I did. I read the Cliff Notes, okay?
And I'm Rabbit, and instead of a flower, I got you a cactus.
So if you couldn't tell, today we are doing the Brick Eaters.
We're doing
eating bricks.
Wait, this isn't Bunny Boy Part 2.
Oh, snap.
Well, we just I don't know. I had a feeling that maybe there was something going on in the world where maybe people were eating bricks or something.
Had a dream, like Dale Cooper style. Mole went to the Red Room, and the residents, Cryptic Corp, etc., were in the Red Room, and they said to you backwards, like, "Do the Brick Eaters?" And you were like, snap.
So that's why we're doing the Brick Eaters.
Demon resident.
I cannot guarantee that this isn't going to line up with real life events. None of us can. So your lawyers can take that up with someone else.
I thought we were just doing it because, like, there's a break between Season 1 and Season 2 of the Bunny Boy, but I guess that's a fine explanation, too.
Alright, so an official description from a website, one of them, of the Brick Eaters, says, "The Brick Eaters is an absurdist buddy movie featuring a very tall internet content screener teaming up with an aging career criminal whose primary companions are an oxygen bottle and a .44 Magnum. After a short crime spree cementing their unhinged partnership, they work together to prevent a middle-aged lottery winner from polluting the LA water supply with a massive amount of fluoride. Their adventures unfold via a highly unreliable alcoholic narrator desperately avoiding the reality of spousal abandonment." So if you could not tell, The Brick Eaters is a mystery novel, and it's told in flashback.
So the book is based off of two articles that were published in the New York Times that were printed 3 days apart in July of 2010, which is 8 years before the book actually came out. And one of them was titled "The Final Crime Spree of an Oxygen-Toting Robber," about, well, would you look at that? Exactly what it says. An aging career criminal's last hurrah!
The other is titled "Policing the Web's Lurid Precincts," which is about content screeners and the horrors involved in a job so fundamental to the functioning of social media as we know it.
And so the residents asked, how do we bring these two things together?
And the answer was clearly a book. I mean, what else would it be?
It was also apparently partially inspired by Breaking Bad and the way they do the collision of unlikely characters.
The Brick Eaters is kind of formatted like a comedy almost, but the residents take it in a different direction at the same time.
Yeah, I think with
so the book starts with somebody and he's like, "I bet you're wondering how I got myself into this situation." No, it doesn't.
Frank's like slugging some Jack Daniels. He looks at the camera and it's like, that's me. Now you're wondering how I ended up in this situation.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the cast of characters within the book, and it seems like at every turn a joke could be made about it. But strangely enough, the novel itself is kind of grim and oddly touching, but rarely is it funny, except in a very dark humor kind of way. And the way the story flows takes a sort of breadcrumbs kind of path, with the residents leading the reader along into unforeseen and bizarre situations that come together, or they don't.
Breadcrumbs, if you will.
So, with that, I think we should just jump right in and start discussing the book. So the book itself is divided up into 3 sections rather than into chapters. And the first part is called Blood Jet.
Abandoned in a barren corner of nowhere, the old man's body was found on a blacktop road next to his oxygen bottle. Some would say the dead man's sorry fate was fixed, that his life was a series of arrows all pointing at this exact spot. After all, with 57 convictions and 36 out of 64 years spent in prison, Wilmer Graves never aimed at nirvana. Not that I knew his name back then.
All right. So it opens up. We've got our fella sitting here and he's watching TV. He sees on TV. He's like, "Oh my god, some guy died on the side of the road, and I'm sad and lonely."
Yeah, and he sees this, and his life is completely just at... It has bottomed out. It could not get much worse without some kind of external force. And our narrator, Franklin Blodgett, looks at this, a mysterious case out all the way in Missouri, and he says, this is my chance. This is how I'm going to inject meaning into my life. Which is to say, by pursuing this thing that has absolutely nothing to do with me. It's weird, because the beginning of the book is nothing like the rest of it. But it does give you a good idea of the narrator that you're going to be stuck with for the rest of the book.
Stuck with is a very good term to use when it comes to old Frankie.
Yeah, it reminded me in a way of like Confederacy of Dunces, where even from the beginning, you're looking at the person you're going to be seeing the world through, and you're like, seriously? This guy? You couldn't find anyone else. Just the most dysfunctional human being on the planet at any given time.
Not even in like a Spider-Man, like affectionate, like endearing kind of dysfunctional, but just like you can understand why his life ended up the way it is and why he's so lonely, because I wouldn't want to hang out with him either.
Can you speak up when you say that?
Wait, the last part? Oh, I wouldn't want to hang out with him either.
The only really good part about having him as a narrator is that he's the one with the most events.
And he has that distinctive residential voice to him. Okay, all right, that we talk about in every single episode now, I think.
And the usage of the word mondo.
Anytime the residents are telling a story.
More specifically,
nobody else says that.
Specifically, the usage of the word mondo struck me as very Randy.
The narrator kind of sounds... Well, he sounds like how Randy speaks. And he also reminds me of Randy because they're both kind of very pathetic men.
I'd rather hang out with Randy
with
than Frank.
ex-wives. Yeah, I mean, Randy isn't an alcoholic, so I don't think...
He's also not, like, a bad dude. He's weird and dysfunctional, but he's not, like, a jerk.
Yeah, they're both definitely desperate. I mean, the residents like to tell these kinds of stories about, like, lost individuals that are just desperate for meaning. And you do see that with, like, Randyland, but you see it also with, like, the narrator in River
Bunny
of Crime.
Boy.
You see it with Mr. X in God in Three Persons. And yeah, you totally see it with Bunny Boy. Now, you do see, like, desperate, confusing situations in, like, Intruders and Gingerbread Man, but the key difference there is that we see essentially the kind of scene we have with the opening part of the book, this longing for meaning, but with the Brick Eaters, the residents finally tell the story of somebody reaching out and grabbing it.
Someone's pursuit of that meaning.
Yeah, because I feel like Randyland and stuff, he just has these temporary asphyxiations he jumps to sort of cope with his meaningless existence. Ooh, that was very bleak to say that. Whereas with Brick Eaters, he just goes out and does this gigantic, scary thing.
Yeah, I think the residents with Brick Eaters, weirdly enough, have taken a lot of the aspects of their, like, storytelling albums and storytelling works in general and brought them all together. Because you see bits of this kind of story coming together like a few decades back, but now we're getting a lot of things that we didn't have before, because we get that, like, Bad Day on the Midway style view of where these characters are coming from. We see their origins, and we also get to see, in a way, their inner thoughts. but we also get that sort of like God in three persons, like being in the moment of the action kind of thing.
And with Bunny Boy, spoiler alert for part 2 of our episode, he does end up going to Arkansas, and in a way I feel like those journeys are kind of similar, but not really, because Bunny Boy's his journey to this location in the middle of nowhere in the United States is sort of the climax of the story, whereas with Brick Eaters it's just the almost the call to action. I mean, we all know what the actual call to action of Brick Eaters is, but the actual first kind of action that takes place is him going to Clinton, Missouri.
So let's talk about some of the characters we meet and like our initial impressions of them. Let's start with. How about we start with Frank?
We can start with Frank because my first impression, actually, one of my first impressions of the entire book was what? Let's see, 10 pages in. Yeah, 10 page. Not even 10 pages in, just because it starts off with like a couple pages about the dedication and everything. About 3 or 4 pages into the actual story, and he just meets this deputy, and he calls it a perpetually pissed off lesbo deputy, and I was like, whoa! I don't like this guy. Did you guys remember? I think I messaged the group chat, and I was like, hey guys? I was like, I don't like this. I don't like this very much.
Kat, you are like totally correct about that. It kind of caught me off guard because I am definitely by no means under the impression that the residents are anywhere near.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. That's why it shocked me so badly.
But it was just like, and just for the residents to like step into a character like that, it is very shocking.
Yeah.
Also funny how later on in the book, Frank is like, I do have friends that are members of the LGBT community.
He says it in a very...
Like, shut up, you goon!
He says it in a very holier than thou way. He says, like someone asks him, like, how he's from LA and that's where all the gays live, apparently. And he's like, I have friends in the, I have gay friends, lesbian friends, transgender friends. He says it in a very, like, self-righteous way, but then like
look, I can name all the things the acronym is for.
Like in his internal dialogue,
I have the whole acronym down. How could I possibly be? And he's like flexing about how woke he is to somebody who has just like thrown a slur at him. He's socially graceless. He doesn't have any idea about like, he's just not self-aware, I guess, and that's what makes this book kind of fun to read, where the narrator is so completely helpless in terms of how to navigate the world. I mean, he's going through it blind, bumping into walls left and right, and you're just like watching him as his life falls apart.
Yeah, Frank is also an alcoholic. It's like the one thing that the back of the book describes him as. An alcoholic writer desperately in need of distraction, having been recently abandoned by his wife. He's
honestly good for her.
He's definitely an alcoholic. That's very apparent as the book continues on.
Remember the nacho.
Let's talk about Patty, why don't we?
Oh, Patty. I think
Patty.
As a transition from talking about Patty, or talking about Frank to Patty, we could mention, I want to mention the way the narrator talks about women in this book.
Which is not ideal. May I just say, not ideal.
I just say, he doesn't like them. I mean, he likes them, but he doesn't like them. You know what I mean? He's a woman hater.
He likes them, but he doesn't respect
There you go.
them.
He likes to have relations with them. He likes them as visual objects, but not so much as human beings to talk to. And
Which is, I mean, at first, I think that can kind of turn somebody off from the book because they assume, like, well, if the residents are writing like this, it must mean that they share these views, but they make him pay, like, repeatedly.
Yes.
For the way he navigates the world. Like, he ruins, that's the key part of Franklin Blodgett's existence, is that anything that comes into his life will leave his life because of him.
Yes, and I think, hearkening back towards how 4 pages into the story, he uses 2 slurs, actually. I reviewed one being lesbo, the other being a much more vulgar slur for lesbians. But you see that, I'm not reading this and thinking, residents hate gays. No, I don't have any illusions about that. So there's another thing like that. I don't believe the residents hate women. I think this is just our extremely unreliable narrator being,
They're really good at writing misogyny.
I think the scene,
no, you know what? No, let's say, so the scene on page 69 is a pretty good image of how, Frank sees women. Wow, that is so good. I cannot believe.
You know what? The residents are.
Can we just give a round of applause to the residents again for putting that on page 69? Nice
Yes,
one.
seriously.
Nice.
I can just imagine them, like, hunched around a table meticulously. We have to make sure this is on the 69th page. We have to make sure the book is this many inches tall, this many inches wide, and there's this many words on every page. It has to be on this page.
Anyway, yeah, I feel like that's a good indicator of how he sees women. And the fact that it's on his, like, tiny little phone screen, and he's just, like, dwelling in sadness afterwards is, like, it's just a very funny picture.
It's
Well,
a really
the scene
messy
actually
setup.
starts the page beforehand, where it's talking about first. He's reading about, like, watching the ones where it's like, there was an angelic quote-unquote teen, reading. So he's watching these pornographic videos starring people who are supposed to be acting as teenage women. And we also obviously see his attraction towards younger women when he immediately goes to Patty, who he knows, or he doesn't know, but he automatically sees her and knows, like, he assumes she's in her, like, 20s, if that.
Yeah. So he's sort of a scummy guy, but what you do see with Patty is, like, she is just sort of, like, she's an honest woman. I mean, she does lead a sort of, like, really sad life, but she's also got a kind of hope in her, and she's got one hell of a backbone.
Yes. She's, she's going through a lot. Like, I don't think this is very spoilery. If it is, we can cut it out. But, she's going through a lot with her mother being very ill, and she has to raise her younger brother, basically, who's this huge delinquent, and she's working this dead-end job, and her relationship with her kind of boyfriend is really tumultuous, and basically everything about her life is kind of shitty. But she's holding her head up pretty high through it.
I think the next character to talk about would be Ted, then.
Oh, Ted. Yeah, I think that's who they mean.
And so for another side of, like, for another side of how Frank views other people, you get into how he views Ted Hendricks, who ends up being a pretty major character in the following parts. But for a bit of background, Frank goes to Missouri trying to follow this lead about a dead guy laying out in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of Missouri, which is also the middle of nowhere, on the side of a highway with nothing but an oxygen bottle and a .44 Magnum. And one of the main people he finds connected to this case is Ted Hendricks, who is the extremely tall techie that's mentioned in the description for the book. And it's weird, Frank kind of, like, both seems to infantilize him and be incredibly jealous of him. This brings in also the article, one of the articles that the residents used as reference or as inspiration for this. The point of that article was basically tech moderation jobs like traumatize people. And you do get that impression from Ted Hendricks.
My boy has seen some stuff, to put it lightly.
Let's just say he's seen some monkey business.
Yikes.
He's just
I'll be here all week, folks.
Scared lad.
He's very pitiable.
He's very twitchy.
He's twitchy and he's adorable.
Yeah.
I really like Ted. I really love Ted.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
Hendricks.
He's a good boy. He's a sweet little boy.
I would do anything for him.
He is a Residence fan.
He is a Residence fan.
He
That
is a
threw me
resident.
off.
Yeah, I guess there's not a lot of other major characters that show up because we don't really get introduced to Margot. Do we get introduced to
No,
Margot
yeah, you
this
do
time
get
around?
introduced to Margot because you know, they go
Alright.
to the house and whatever.
Yeah.
Also, we should be careful with how many plot
Right.
details, even little details, because it takes away some of the trivia in the book. So we should be careful with how many.
Yeah, well, let's not talk about the monkey business thing in depth. That's for people to discover on their own. And so the next character we get introduced to, and pretty much the last major one of this section, is Margot, Ted's girlfriend, who seems to be the ultimate object of Frank's desires, but she remains curiously out of reach, and she's like the main reason that Frank is jealous of Ted.
He doesn't understand why someone like Margot would be with somebody like Ted.
Which is just a testament to, the quality and character of this man. He has no concept of maybe he's nice. Maybe you can be nice to women, and they will like you more.
Nah. That sounds fake.
No, sorry. That
I
was
personally
crazy.
enjoy it when people are just rude. But I'm from New Jersey, so.
Yeah, you don't know what it's like in LA or in Clinton, Missouri, or anywhere in between.
I don't know where anywhere is like other than New Jersey. I have never left the state.
So since we've covered all the juicy details of part 1, let's move on to part 2, the stork.
The stork.
I woke up several hours later, hungover again. Peeking out from the blanket through a blur of pain and nausea, all I could see was something towering over me. With a very erect posture, the something was pacing a small area next to my cot. The something was disturbed. The something was Ted Hendricks, and he was screaming at me.
So the main character we didn't discuss in part 1
It's probably my favorite character.
is Wilmer.
Yes.
Yeah, Wilmer is the sort of driving force of the narrative, despite being dead for literally the entire book and only
spoilers?
you never hear from him directly. I'm sorry to say, but he does not come back from the
God
dead.
damn it!
Are you saying Ted
I'm sorry.
doesn't know voodoo?
Hoodoo.
I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
They never said that Ted didn't have his freaky looking skull staff. What if he's actually just going around conjuring spirits?
Margot threw those out. So the storyline we get for Wilmer is it's neat. The way we discover it is really neat because Ted gets thrown into this whole affair unwittingly.
And very suddenly.
Who's to say which affair very suddenly, and he ends up through strange circumstances telling our narrator about how he's connected to any of this and how he's connected to Wilmer Graves. Yeah. A fun note is that this section does open with Ted talking about the nickname that Wilmer had for him, which was the Stork. And the names for all 3 of the sections are alternate names for people, nicknames, which has an interestingly residential vibe
Yeah,
to it.
you know, back at it again with the identity in doubles and such.
Yeah. So who wants to talk a little bit about Wilmer's story?
Did you just sing the Brady Bunch theme? It's the story
not
of a man named
intentionally.
Wilmer.
But, you know,
Wilmer's dope. That's my opinion on Wilmer.
I love Willie. I love the story. It just starts with Ted monkeying around, and then it just goes. Sorry.
Yeah, no, Ted, the trajectory of Ted's life is very, normal, and then Willie comes into it, and then it's like, well, time to go ape poop.
time for everything to get so crazy.
And,
There's just that mere chance. If Ted was not there, he would have had
if Ted was in a, right place, right time, or wrong place, wrong time?
I mean, to be
Only-
fair, that's
Yeah.
how the entire book operates. Is like every single thing that happens and progresses of the plot is like this. Just
Crazy chance, yeah.
yeah.
the right man in the
Yeah.
wrong.
I
place
will
makes
say-
all the more difference in the world.
Residential history features a number of these, like, chance encounters.
God in third person.
So it leads one to wonder if this type of, like, story... Like, I'm talking about the real residents.
Oh.
The real residents? But, like, the residents themselves and how their encounters at random sort of...
Shaped them.
Push
yeah,
them
no,
in
you're
new
right. Yeah, now that I think
directions.
about it.
And so, yeah, this type of story seems really important to them, and maybe they thought that this was the way to tell it. Yeah.
But so we've got Willie, who is like the back says a career criminal. He's been through it. He's seen it. He's done it all, and now he's got a tall child hooked onto his destiny, and they're just they're just going.
Yeah, it's only through this random encounter that something substantial begins to form in both of their lives, because they both would have probably ended up in very predictable places doing sort of passionless, predictable things if they hadn't encountered each other. And so one wonders, like, was it worth it, essentially?
Is it fate?
Is it fate?
And on that note, I really like the relationship between Ted and Willie. It's probably my favorite relationship in the book.
It's my favorite.
It's so wonderful. I love that
I mean,
relationship. It's such a
Like, so when we read the little description a while back, we said that The Brick Eaters is an absurdist buddy movie story, and really that buddy movie section is the entire dynamic between good old Willie and Ted.
And I would watch an entire movie about Willie and Ted. It's such a good dynamic. Like they both bring out the best in each other.
It's really touching. Yeah, it's so residential, I guess, that the residents would take those two articles and, like, weave emotion into them so thoroughly.
And you see, they compared it to Breaking Bad, assumably referring to Jesse Pinkman and Walter White. And it's like, I can see that comparison, except it's just as if that relationship was healthy. Like, they weirdly, despite their circumstance and despite who they both are and how different they are, they have a very healthy relationship.
In such a way where you want them to just, like, drop all of this and, like, just
Buy
be
a
there
rabbit
for
farm,
each other.
like in a
chicken farm.
or a chicken farm. I was referencing Lenny and George of Mice and Men. Boom. I know books.
Yeah, I really like their dynamic. It really feels like just a kind of classic two contrasting characters partner up kind of comedy movie situation, and then like
But it's not funny.
well, like the rest of the book, the residents slowly twist that into something dark and scary. Slowly scary.
I think it's kind of beautiful. Like, that all that's between them is, like, really amazing, because they're both very, like, closed off characters for their own reasons, but they find a way to express vulnerability with each other. They both sort of fill voids in each other's lives that they weren't expecting to be filled. I mean, that's like, the residents seem to want to tell that kind of story.
It's beautiful stuff, man.
Yeah. Also, let's talk about Pagwag.
Pagwag. That stands
got
for
really-
Poliwhirls are great and good.
The W and the A are silent.
Yeah?
Pagwag's my favorite
Damn it.
Pokemon.
Did you say Pagwag?
Yeah, I mean, without spoiling what Pagwag is, I remember reading this and just being like, this is beautiful. This is perfect. What a residential villain, you know? Because...
It was so baffling to me because, you know, the back says,
Yeah, I was
you
just
know,
gonna mention
the like, attempting to supply, like, you know, pollute the LA water supply with
poison the
with
LA water
fluoride.
supply. Like,
and I
okay.
didn't know about the, like, you know, too much fluoride thing. So here I am thinking, like, are the residents, like, or the characters in this book pushing, like, an Alex Jones fluoride in your water makes you gay, like, narrative? Like, what is happening? Why is this a bad thing? But then,
Yeah, like,
I think they're funneling a kind of like distaste for mainstream culture, but are they mocking those kinds of people through our main villain, who we'll get to in a bit? You know, or are they just like observing this type of person? Because the residents do seem to have like a distaste for the mainstream, or they did in the past. But is this like sort of a testament to the futility of that kind of attempt to bring it all down, that power grab sort of thing?
when I read the back of the book, when I got the book, I read the part about the polluting the LA water supply with massive amounts of fluoride, and I was just like, okay, that sounds really weird. Sounds like the residents. And then I kind of just, like, that was such a weird detail that my mind just blanked it out. And when I got to the introduction of Pagwag in the book, I was like, oh yeah, that was like a thing. Like, oh my god, I can't believe I forgot about that.
I mean, with the amount of time that it takes to get to Pagwag, you wouldn't think that it was you would sort of forget about
Like, it almost
it.
seems like the story's coming to a close at that point, and it's really just beginning.
Yeah, you get so caught up in like all the Frank's shenanigans that you're thinking like, oh, forgot about the actual story here.
that sounds
The way-
bad. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Like, I feel like the way we're phrasing it makes it sound like it's a bad thing. It's not a bad
Oh
thing.
no, it's a wonderful thing. I think the way this book is structured, it starts off kind of in a very similar way to some of the Residence projects we were comparing it to earlier, like Randyland and the Bunny Boy, specifically to me. In that we're starting off with this unreliable narrator who is introduced to all these weird mysterious observations, and then in the second part we sort of get all of that information filled in all at once, which is very similar to how Bunny Boy, we kind of see this weird, just crazy situation, and slowly it starts to make sense, and very same with Randyland. But with the Brick Eaters, like, once all that information's filled in, like, you're only halfway through the book, and then more stuff piles on, and it just spirals out of control from there. It's very interesting.
Let's talk about the dynamic between Frank and Ted, because for every good thing that exists, there is a disappointing and disillusioned sort
It's
of
not
thing.
good. It's not. I mean, I can't imagine any relationship that Frank is in, platonic or otherwise, being at all healthy, considering he's a. How can I say this without cursing? This is a family show. Poop head.
Poop head. Yeah, Ted just deserves so much better. Also, side note, the residents really like that name.
Yes.
But anyway, Frank is such a goon, a loser, a pathetic pile of slime writhing about on the pavement. You know, you just want to you want to kick him.
I want to kick him. I'd kick him.
Yeah,
I'd kick him
then
too.
you have Ted, who's just innocent. He doesn't do much. All he was a driver for Wilmer. That's it.
Yeah, but at the same time, he was Wilmer's friend, and you have Frank, who's essentially trying to co-opt the whole situation and their whole mission just because he's desperate for meaning in his life.
Yeah, that need for something is kind of taken over, and now it's causing him to kind of ruin what's going
Like-
on.
Yeah, it happens in a river of crime sort of situation where this meaning comes at a cost. You know, he can't just take situations onto himself and then expect it to everything to comply. You know, Ted is genuinely traumatized by the whole thing, but he gets shoved back into it, you know, for better or for worse.
Yes. He is definitely dragged kicking
Yeah.
and screaming into this situation.
Yeah. But once he's in, he's in. And then through his association with Frank, life seems to get a little bit worse for him.
So here I am, in jail, in Clinton, dump, Missouri, lying on this dump cot. I can feel every dump bump and lump on this dump mattress, thinking about how many other dump have laid here and pissed and thrown up and maybe even croaked right on this bed. It's been a week. Or has it been more? 2 weeks? 3? It's all so hazy now. But yeah, Ted Hendricks' girlfriend Margot eventually showed up, scowling, pissed off and more beautiful than ever, and took the kid home. Patty got my stuff from the motel and brought my laptop, allowing me to document Willie and Ted's excellent adventure while it was still fresh on my mind.
Do you think they did that on purpose? Do you think they purposely named these characters Willie and Ted so they can make a Bill and Ted joke?
I think so.
I think it was crazy how the last line of the book is Willie actually comes back from the dead, and Willie and Ted are like, be excellent to one another.
Yeah, that really threw me off.
I was like, whoa, where did this come from? And Keanu Reeves was there?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was just
Crazy.
there.
Maybe Keanu Reeves can play Ted. So there is a story that eventually comes together in all of this. And there's a team that comes along with it. Essentially, all the major characters of the book collide. I mean, I don't think this really counts as a spoiler, because there's not that many major characters, and it's a mystery novel, and I mean, come on, y'all. But their, like, team dynamic is very, how shall we say? It exists out of
It's very
necessity.
B-Team-esque. In
Yeah.
that it's like, you know, knock off A-Team, I guess. In that it sucks.
Yeah, almost
Not that-
none of it works.
Yeah, they all follow an endeavor that I would say maybe they're not the most qualified individuals around for, but they do pursue it.
But isn't that life, man? You're never qualified,
That's
man, until you
life,
do it,
man.
man.
You just like
just
go, man.
go.
You just like do things. So our unlovable narrator's life kind of he gets continuously what he deserves, and that's really all you need to know about that. But let me say, it will bring you presumably great satisfaction to follow that.
It's almost as if you
But
get the
there's
mental
somebody-
image as if like he dropped a rake and he continuously keeps stepping on the rake and the rake keeps hitting him in the face, and every time he's like, damn it, how did this rake get here?
And somebody comes up to him and says, hey, maybe we can not step on rakes. And he's like, yeah. And then he he turns 180 degrees around and steps on the rake he just got done stepping on.
I think it's a team effort, really. It's not just him. It's like everyone guides everyone into stepping into the ring.
Oh no, we're specifically referring at this point to the way that Frank continuously messes up his own life. But
I mean,
as far as like
everyone messes
interpersonal
up.
relationships,
Everyone messes up. his life, basically through his interactions with them, and then I don't want to spoil.
I just don't think any of the rake stepping. I don't think the rake stepping would be happening essentially if Frank were not there. So sure, he is the reason all this destruction sort of occurs. Everything would have been fine if he left it alone, but it's only him. He's the only reason any of this is happening. And I'm not afraid to say it. Everything is Franklin Blodgett's fault. 2019.
Well, it's not
Franklin
wrong.
Blodgett did everything wrong.
He's kind of like a magnet, and he's attracting all the different things together. And then some of those things don't work together.
I mean, yeah. I mean, you see him like with this car on the side of a highway. That whole segment. That was so.
That's on you, fam.
Yeah, the hypothermia thing. It's just like. That is, if anything, that is one reason to buy the book.
And it all happened just because he can't go without a drink.
Of course.
But as far as
so,
like you were saying with how, you know, everybody messes up his life, that's true, but it's like you also said through his interactions with them. If he doesn't talk to them and treat them a certain way, none of this would have happened.
I personally think that everyone in this book messes up their own lives.
Oh yeah, no, for
Everyone
sure.
is
But
stepping on the rope.
I'm at this point referring specifically to Frank and how he like continuously and repeatedly messes up his own life, instead of like how other characters make a bad decision and stick with it. You know what I mean?
yes. So enough about Frank, though. We've paid enough attention to him. It's time to talk about our sweet, dear Crawbaby.
Alex Jones. I feel like Crawbaby watches a lot of InfoWars.
Yes, but I also... Is it strange? I don't know, that I was kind of... I always imagined him to look a little bit like Borat.
Borat? What?
Yeah, I always thought Crawford would look a little bit like Borat.
I see him as kind of like
like white Borat.
No, I don't. I always pictured him as kind of like a U.S., the U.S. Army guy. Just you know exactly what I'm referring to. Just the U.S. Army guy.
Yeah.
I feel like he'd look like, maybe like a buff, as terrifying as this sounds, like a buff Alex Jones. Ugh.
I imagined him like
I thought he was wimpier than that.
I imagined him
know?
like a Bond villain, but like an like one who's like American military guy, as opposed to this
like
typical Bond villain.
Jarhead type guy.
I just imagine him to look like a generic, just general, like a mustache, a beret on, all the camo drab on,
Am I the one who did they mention him having a mustache?
No, but I imagined it. It's.
I also imagined it. It's okay.
I imagine him to be that sort of military sergeant guy.
Like very prototypical military looking guy, except like
Who said
that guy who's like super into the military but never actually served.
Yes, exactly.
He's even got the same type of gun.
Oh.
I imagine him to look like a Lieutenant Surge from Pokemon.
That's it, except with like a buzz cut and not an adorable cartoon man. That's it.
Oh, wait,
Damn it, you got it.
This picture is exactly what I imagine him, except I imagine him to be bald. Wait. Okay.
Yeah, definitely like
So we all
either
imagine
really
him to
short
look
buzz
like
cut or
different
bald.
things.
Yes. Oh my god, I can't believe I was picturing Lieutenant Surge the entire time and I didn't even realize it.
So what do we think about our Crawbaby and the monolith of the Midwest that is Casa de la Crawford?
That was he was very scary, and
My man's insane. My man is a little bit cuckoo crazy. My man is he's nutso.
Bit of a whack job, but I
Bit of a
love
whack
his
job.
rants.
He's quite the beast.
His rants are some of the... I love the way he screams about things. It's so...
Again, Alex Jones-esque.
Oh, it's amazing.
He
It
reminds me of
reminds me-
Alex Jones.
it reminds me of myself. Except I only scream about the residents alone in my house. pacing back and forth.
I like the one rant where he talks about if God was a gun. Like, this is the kind of guy we're talking about. He's making up for a lot of things, and he does that with a passion for guns and all sorts of rifles, and he's got a Hummer, he's a lottery winner, and he chose to live in Kingdom City, Missouri, which, there you go.
Is that a real place?
Yes, it is. It's fine. Yeah, I think he's entertaining. I think Crawford is entertaining. He's a very particular portrait of a very weirdly common kind of person. It's the sort of person who buys a new Ford truck.
Again, like, I feel like he's like I keep saying this, but he's like very prototypical, like Alex Jones InfoWars type. Like, he definitely watches a lot of InfoWars. Like, he strikes, that kind of person.
I just like to imagine Alex Jones walking around with this like big like guarded compound.
You don't
Like,
think that's the kind of
yelling
lifestyle Alex Jones lives?
I mean, he makes
Well, I
a
don't
lot of
doubt
money.
But I mean, like, not like an Alex Jones type of compound. I'm talking like a Beasley type of compound.
I also did imagine that the Beasley compound did look like a regular Midwestern home, at the surface.
Because all
So
that
that's
crap was
like
underground, all the
walls.
craziness.
Yeah.
Yep, soon his home.
You need moles to dig those kind of holes.
I was gonna go with Animal Lover. Soon his home will be underground.
Working down below. So, without giving away what happens, what do we think of the ending?
Open-ended.
I think my reaction to it in the chat was, what the
Yeah, that was basically my reaction. So what I like to do a lot when I'm reading a book is I like to go to the last page and just read the last word, the last sentence, and then I'll just have it in my mind and like think about how it comes together. So I did that with this book, and I had an idea of how it was going to end. But then I was reaching the end of the book. I was like, how is this going to end? And then it just did. And
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it. You're thinking, how is it going to end? And then it just did.
Yeah.
It's kind of jarring, but it makes sense with the way it's told.
It does make sense with the way it's told, but it did sort of leave me feeling like I was looking for more pages. Peeking up underneath.
I
I
was
know
like,
a lot of people were saying like they thought the book was missing pages, but I just still think that's quite because the ending is meant to be a little more open-ended, like what happens to Frank.
I mean, I really like how it ends just because, I don't know, it's just very, the residents are kind of taking advantage of the medium here, because I feel like you're allowed to end a book like this, but you're not allowed to end like a movie or an album.
I don't know,
with
because you see a
this.
lot of movies with weird endings like that. Or, I guess the first thing that came to mind as far as like movies and TV would be like the original run of Twin Peaks, which isn't the best example for how normal things end or go.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not a particularly big fan of like weird open-ended endings like this most of the time.
If God in Three Persons ended without the final song, like it just ended right there,
Yeah.
that would be very weird. I think they can kind of get away with it in book 4.
It caught me off guard, but it didn't feel totally out of place. I mean, I liked it.
I feel like, to a certain extent, like, the book ended because at that point, there were no more bricks to chew, if you want to put it that way. And that there's not really anything. I mean, obviously there could still be stuff happening to close it out, but there's no more additional tension to add. So it just sort of ends. Because the book really is just about just continually adding tension as the characters continue to make these specific choices that alter the entire trajectory of the book. And at that point, there's really no other place to go.
So it's like you're sitting there and you're like, hello? But it's also where there is nowhere else to go. Which I think is remarkable, considering that's kind of been everyone in the book has that kind of, we've discussed it, or at least hinted at it, where everyone kind of has that general, like, there is nowhere else to go, very dead-end lives. And now there really is nowhere else to go.
There is no more to say.
In search of like a more of a different hole to die in. I mean, Frank did find what he was looking for, but it was because of his fundamental faults as a person that things ended in the way that they did.
It was a very happy ending. It was very joyful.
Very happy ending.
And it ended with 3 weddings. And
everybody got married.
It was a
Everybody
very happy,
got married.
bubbly ending.
Yes, that's true.
They managed to kill the dragon.
They got the treasure.
Rosebud was the name of the sled.
He walks away. He gets the chocolate factory at the end.
He does.
He gets his golden tickets worth.
Turns out Darth Vader was his father.
He escapes the video game.
All right, well, here's the news. A while back. It's been a while, so has it? I guess it's only been like a month since our last episode. So. In Between Dreams was made available on vinyl, CD, and digital download from Secret Records. I believe every single vinyl release is now sold out, so you can only buy it on CD or digital. So if you did buy that, apparently they are starting to ship out, depending on what exactly you bought, because it was kind of complicated.
Yeah, the base vinyl set, the album itself is being sent out to the people who did specify that they wanted that early. But then the bonus one that has the encore and the video audio and the background music, that's not shipping until August.
So also, related to, the Brick Eaters, released very recently, as of a couple days ago. The Brick Eaters has been re-released, and you can now buy it and get a little music. What is it? I don't know.
You got a little tunage, so you can read your little book and listen to a little bit of tunage, get in the mood, get in the vibe.
Editor's note, the tunage you're listening to in this podcast is the tunage included with the book.
Exactly.
And also upcoming is God in Three Persons Preserved, coming out in August from Cherry Red Records. And also on a similar note, there will be a God in Three Persons performance at the Lab, which is sold out. It's a part of a benefit for a place called The Lab in San Francisco, which is a public space dedicated to the arts worth preserving. So, that's about all the news we've got for the moment, but by the time this episode is out, which will probably only be in a couple days, something new will have shown up, because it seems that even in the summer, the residents do not calm down.
No vacation for these boys. And or girls. Who knows? Alright, we're at the end here, and I'd just like to give a thank you to all the people that made this show possible, such as Cryptic Corporation, the residents, Good King Sparky, who edits these episodes, because out of the goodness of his heart and his love for us and our love for him, it binds us together. We'd also like to thank Pagwag and the AELAW, the Association of Ex-Wives Leaving Alcoholic Writers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pagwag, for that glorious sponsorship. And I hope LA enjoys the fluoride in their water.
And we'd also like to thank listeners like you. Thank you.